Let us go through our Module 1 outline. This is what you can expect over the next 8 lessons. Do remember that this module is your introduction really to digital marketing before we dive into SEO in Module 2. So, Lesson 1, we're going to be looking at the introduction to digital marketing. Lesson 2 is tracking and measuring your marketing efforts. Lesson 3, we'll be looking at determining your target markets. Lesson 4 is all about content development and copy. Lesson 5 is around free marketing options, where we will introduce the concept of SEO. Lesson 6 is the world of Google Ads. Lesson 7 will be looking at paid social media marketing. And in Lesson 8, the final lesson of Module 1 will be creating a digital strategy, a jam-packed module, and I'm really looking forward to taking this journey with you. Now, no digital marketing course is complete without a bit of a disclaimer. Digital marketing is constantly evolving at a much faster rate than its predecessors. With that said, you don't need to have a big budget to succeed in your digital marketing efforts, and that is one of the purposes of this course. I want to try and give you actionable skills and insights no matter what you have to spend. I want to take you through some key points in digital marketing history, as it actually provides a nice almost what's to come in the course, the different topics that we will be covering. So starting in 1993, the first clickable banner ad went live, and that is now what we call display or programmatic ads, so showing banners on different websites. Then in 1994, Yahoo was founded. It launched in 1995, and the first social media site, GeoCities, was launched in 1994. Then also in the mid-90s, cookie technology appeared, and you'll understand that a bit better in the next few lessons, but that's essentially what is used to track our behavior online. Then in 1997, search engine optimization officially began. It had been around for a few years before, but just didn't have a name yet. And actually, before 1995, we did have obviously search engines, but the way that results used to be shown is alphabetically. So I'm quite glad that's not the case anymore, to be honest. Then in 1999, Salesforce launched as a subscription model. Now, Salesforce is a software as a service business in that it basically creates a dashboard and combines all your data from your marketing efforts and enables you to analyze it and make changes based on that. And launching that kind of service as a subscription model in 1999 completely changed the game for that industry and enabled many more people to use services like that at a much cheaper rate. Then in the year 2000, Google launched AdWords. It's now called Google Ads, and that completely changed the game for, at the time, really just search engine marketing, so appearing on the search results page. Pretty awesome. In 2001, Universal, the movie production company, launched the first mobile marketing campaign. So really not that long ago. And then in 2005, Google launched Google Analytics and YouTube. So Analytics was actually launched 5 years after AdWords. And then, of course, YouTube, which is now the world's second largest search engine. Then in 2006, split testing in marketing began, which was also, marked a significant moment. And that's just essentially splitting your traffic. So let's say you're targeting people with a sales campaign. You target half of them with one landing page and another half with another, and see which one performs best. That is essentially split testing. Then in 2010, Google started using search history for ads, as in enabling advertisers to target people more effectively. So, the ads that we see are more relevant and more targeted. But that was only from 2010. Then in 2011, Panda, that's the name to an update that Google's ranking algorithm had. This is to do with SEO, and I've put this here as it marked a significant change in how you can rank when it comes to SEO. Essentially, it put content. Content is king. That's kind of where that came from. Then in 2014, Sybil, it was a parallel machine learning platform. This was launched and used by Google. And why it was so amazing is because it is parallel machine learning, meaning that instead of sequential machine learning, which is taking one job and completing it, then moving to the next one, etc., etc., with parallel, it takes one job and breaks it up into multiple parts and then does those different parts simultaneously, so at the same time. So it enables things to be done much quicker. So if you think about data, and all the different data that Google is receiving and feeding to these machine learning tools. And then we close off still a few years ago, but 2017, shoppable Instagram was introduced. Right, so now that we have covered that, let us jump into what else we are looking at today. What you're going to get out of this lesson is to look at digital marketing platforms, followed by understanding common terms and acronyms that we will be using in Module 1. Then defining objectives and key performance indicators, which is very important. And then we will take a quick look at performance marketing basics. So what is digital marketing exactly? Well, in its most basic form, it is the promotion of products and services using electronic means. Essentially, for every traditional marketing channel, there are multiple digital equivalents. There are hundreds and hundreds of different channels, including some very niche ones, which means that it really only suits a small percentage of industries or people, and we can't possibly cover them all. But we will be looking at the top digital marketing platforms, and when I say platform, it's essentially a space where digital marketing takes place. And it is incredibly important to remember that you don't have to use it just because it's there. I think many businesses have made this mistake, and it's totally understandable. It happens. Everyone jumps on the bandwagon because it's popular and new, only to find that it just doesn't have the correct target market or anything like that on it. So that's why it always requires a lot of research. Please do remember this. So if we start off with social media, which falls under digital marketing, social media comprises of websites and applications that enable people to create and share content and or to communicate with others. Now, I'm sure you can think of some before I even move to the next slide. We're going to move on. Okay, so the first one is YouTube. Incredibly popular. Then we have Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok, which is all the rage these days. So that is what we mean when we say social media. It's platforms like these. We will spend more time on social media in lessons 5 and 7 of this module, and of course in future modules, but just Module 1 for now. Then we have something called pay per click, which is also known as PPC, and that's a model of internet marketing where advertisers pay a fee each time an ad is clicked. The one I'm sure we all know is Google Ads, and there are multiple campaign types within the platform, but the top ones are generally search, so advertising for the search engine results page. Then display, putting banners on different websites essentially, and then shopping, which is for e-commerce or retail, and that is essentially a different kind of ad that appears on the search results page as well. It's image based. Then we have Microsoft advertising, which until recently was called Bing advertising. And if you choose to advertise through this platform, then you would be advertising on the Bing search engine, as well as Yahoo and AOL. Google actually does not have any rights to advertise on these platforms. So it's a bit of an interesting one. Very good one to consider when you're looking at search advertising. Then we have Amazon, and it does offer essentially the same campaign options as Google Ads, the three that I at least mentioned, with the difference being that the ads are served on Amazon only. But of course, Amazon is also huge, not necessarily in all areas, but I know in the US, for example. Do you guys use Amazon? Let us know. Is it as amazing as everyone says it is? I don't know it at all, to be honest. Then there are many third-party platforms which assist with performance or targeting with their product. These are called or known as software as a service. AdRoll is an example, and it bridges the gap between what some platforms don't allow for various reasons. For example, as a finance company, you can't retarget or remarket to site visitors on search engines, but a company like AdRoll could do that for you. However, Google actually recently made an announcement, as they do, to say that they are removing support for third-party tracking in the next few years, which is going to mean that companies like this, like AdRoll, like software as a service, that whole industry, they're going to need to find another way to track things. So it's going to be an interesting few years. There is more on PPC in lesson 6 of this module, as well as future modules. Then moving on to digital billboards. Now, to be honest, these are really only for brands that have a big budget. There are various types of ad formats accepted. For example, there is static, so not moving, animated, or rich media, which is a combination of various types of media, including static, animated, video, etc. Then we also have over-the-top media services, which is essentially a streaming media service offered directly to viewers over the internet. And then what falls within that is video on demand. So this happens through digital media players like Roku or Hulu. Then there are also apps, of course, that you can use, and desktops. So an example that is not here would be Netflix. In this case, though, Netflix doesn't sell ads, so it wouldn't be used as a marketing platform. Video ads are sold on ad-supported channels, and some media players, like Roku, allow publishers to promote their channels on the device home screens. So instead of seeing that Roku logo there, that Roku logo there, you would see an ad. Then there are a few things which fall under organic, and that essentially is getting your customers to come to you naturally over time rather than artificially via paid links. So first up, we have something called search engine optimization, or SEO, and that is increasing the amount of visitors to a website by obtaining a high ranking placement in the search engine results page. So essentially appearing underneath the top ads on a search engine results page. Then we have something called Google My Business. And let me just show you what it looks like here. It's called the Knowledge Panel, and it's powered by something called the Knowledge Graph. It's a project by Google, and essentially it's just, instead of just trying to tie together search terms, it's trying to draw out the context of those search terms and then provide better results for the person searching. So we can see here we have an Adidas and a waterfront example. This is what the Google My Business listing looks like. I'm sure you recognize it, or I hope you do. It appears on the right of a page when looking up a brand, or most brands, or different relevant searches. The Knowledge Panel was introduced in 2012, and it's Google's way of connecting info. So you can see on the right here, there's far more information about the business than there used to be, or what we thought was possible. There's reviews included, popular times, you can add a review, you can ask questions, Now you can submit a lead. So there are various changes that are always happening to this listing. Definitely worth doing, even if you're not a brick and mortar store, as in you don't have a physical location. Still definitely worth doing. People still look up brands that don't have physical locations. As I mentioned, it is called the Knowledge Panel. So if we just look at Zara here, which has not got just one location, it's got multiple locations and they haven't sorted that out. That's another story. But at the bottom, you should be able to see it says claim this knowledge panel. So at the moment, actually, Zara have not claimed their knowledge panel, and this is all just information provided by the Google Knowledge Graph. Then we have something called direct traffic, and we will be spending more time on that in lesson 3. But this is essentially people who visit your website not through advertising, but through putting your direct address into the browser bar. That is a source of organic marketing. It's not technically, it would be as a result of other marketing. You know, people wouldn't just know what your brand name or what your website URL was. It could also be bookmarking, but it's in here because it is a big source of traffic. And then finally, customer reviews. Now, I think everyone is always amazed at what they can get if they ask. I know I am. So it's definitely worth trying to ask your customers to leave reviews on Facebook and on Google. It's a well-known, documented fact that if you have more positive reviews, then potential new customers are more likely to convert. So very important to have as part of your strategy. There is more on organic marketing in lesson 5. We're looking at a range of things in that lesson, so looking forward to it. Then we have, under what I grouped as communication, we have email. Email has very much evolved in its short lifespan. Personal email addresses were introduced in 1991. And now we have automation systems that enable hugely advanced targeting and segmentation to send very targeted messages to people. We will be looking at email in Module 2. Then there is affiliates. And affiliates are essentially partnerships, and they can range from being between two small businesses to huge multi-billion-dollar partnerships. As I said earlier, we are going to be spending a few lessons on this as it is a very performance-focused channel. Then there are podcasts, which is essentially like radio, except you can download the episodes. There are more than 500,000 shows, and hosts typically sell 3 slots for ads, generally read by the host, as data does show that it is more well received. It just makes sense. Then we have chatbots. When they work effectively, they streamline communication and allow you to focus on refining and enhancing your overall communication. You can also integrate them with many different platforms. Obviously, it requires tech. It's not something, a standard digital marketer, even I don't understand it all fully, but that's where you know when you need to reach out for help. And then we have instant messenger or SMS. Now, both are still widely used, even the SMS functionality, though in many cases money could be spent or better spent elsewhere. Looking at WhatsApp as an example, you can integrate a chatbot within this and create a business profile. There are some very cool tools and things that you can take advantage of. It just often requires tech and budget. I would like to know what you think of this statement. What works for one business will work for other businesses. Is it A, true, or B, false? I'll give you a few seconds, but I shouldn't have to because the answer is B, false. When it comes to digital marketing, what works for one certainly does not necessarily work for the other. That's why this is so subjective. And it can be quite complicated, even though overall, like I said, if you get the basics right, you're already light years ahead. You're fine. Moving on to what you will hear in Module 1, we're going to go through some common digital marketing terms and acronyms, very handy to understand, so you'll actually know what people are talking about, or marketing people are talking about when you hear these conversations. Let's start off with impression. Now, you receive an impression when an ad or any digital media is shown on a person's screen. So it's just appearing on the screen. It doesn't even have to be 100% on the screen. It's just somewhere on the screen. Reach refers to the number of people who may have seen your ad or content. So now we're removing the focus from the ad and putting it on the person who's seeing the ad. Reach and impressions are often confused. You can reach 100 people, yet have 200 impressions. What that means is that one, or on average at least, every person of those 100 people saw your ad twice. So you received 200 impressions, but you only reached, or you reached 100 people. I hope that makes sense. Then there is frequency, which is referring to the number of times someone may have seen the same ad. So if we take it back to the previous example with reach and impressions, so the frequency there of the 100 people was 2, because they each saw the ad 2 times. Generally, if it gets above 4, then you're risking or running the risk of ad fatigue, which is when essentially someone completely just doesn't even see your ad anymore, just because they've seen it so much, they're just blind to it now. And of course, that's not something you want at all. Then we have device, which is what you are using when performing an action, for example, mobile, desktop, or tablet. Then a conversion. A conversion occurs when a person completes a desired goal, for example, a purchase or submitting a form. We will be talking about conversions a lot, and I'll bring this up again. But yes, so a purchase, submitting a form, subscribing to a newsletter, whatever it is that you want to achieve, you're tracking for those different conversions. Then remarketing, also something we'll be talking about a lot, and this is showing ads to people who have previously visited or interacted with your website or social media. The assumption is that they're more interested in what you have to offer because they've already visited you. And then metrics, another big one. This is a measurable value used to show the effectiveness of marketing efforts. Might sound a bit too vague at the moment. We're going to have to break it down quite a lot. That's really what you'll be seeing over this module. If we move on to segmentation, this is grouping audiences together based on different criteria with the aim to target them with more relevant info or ads. So very quick example, you want to target women with a more feminine ad and men with a more masculine ad. Let's just say that's an example of segmentation. Then lifetime value, which will be coming up towards the end of this module, is the projected revenue that a customer will generate during their lifetime. Then there are different media buying options that I want to take you through. First up, there is CPC, which means cost per click. Then we have CPM, which is cost per 1,000 impressions. The M comes from mil, which is Latin for 1,000. And then we have CPV, which is cost per view, and that is specifically referring to videos and video ads. Then there is also CPA, which is cost per acquisition, CPL, which is cost per lead, and CPE, which is cost per engagement. These are pretty much the metrics that you're going to, or some of the metrics that you would be looking at when working on a campaign. For example, if you have a campaign where the objective is leads, then one of your KPIs, your key performance indicators, we're going to go through that just now, would be CPL, cost per lead, because obviously you need to make sure that that is not too high or too low, there are other metrics that will help you determine that, but CPL would be, of course, one of them and one of the main ones when you're running a lead campaign. Then there are some umbrella terms for bigger concepts, umbrellas within umbrellas, this whole digital marketing thing. SEO is search engine optimization. We looked at that very briefly earlier. Then there is SEM, which is search engine marketing, and that's referring essentially to PPC, so the Google ads, Microsoft advertising, any kind of search engine advertising. And then we have SMM, which is social media marketing, and that encompasses any marketing on any of those channels that we looked at earlier, plus the hundreds of other channels that are available. So I just want to test your retention a little bit. How can you have a reach of 200 with 300 impressions? Is it A, an ad can be shown to someone more than once? Or B, the results come from different channels? And the answer is A, an ad can be shown to someone more than once. There are some channels where you can actually control how many times you want an ad to be shown to someone, but in others you don't have that option. Moving on to objectives and KPIs, specifically what are they and why do we need them? Very important. An objective or objectives are goals set by a business when promoting itself to potential customers, which should be achieved within a given time frame. What is that saying? A goal without a plan is just a wish. So it does need to have a time frame for it to be achieved. Then KPIs, they are key performance indicators, and this is the measurable value or values that show how a business is achieving their objectives. So it's all very well and good saying, I want to do this thing. How do you know that you've achieved that thing? That's what the KPIs are there for, and that's what we will be spending a lot more time on in this module. So let's go through a few examples with some common objectives, starting with branding, either a new business that's starting that wants to build up a brand, or scaling an existing brand. Indicators of this objective would be impressions, so the number of times someone viewed an ad, reach, the number of people you've targeted or reached, traffic is the visits on your site, engagement is any, well, that would differ depending on where it is. If it's social, it would be, let's say, likes or comments or shares. If it's newsletters or emails, it would be open rates and link clicks. So it does depend. And then organic results, and that is referring to people actually searching your brand name. Then we have awareness, and I know awareness and branding are very closely linked, but in this case I'm referring to getting your product or promotion seen by more eyes. So let's just say you've already established a brand, but now you're wanting to create awareness for a new product or service. Then the indicators would be very similar. Impressions, frequency, reach, ad recall, and engagement. Now the new one there is ad recall, and that is essentially an indication. I'm referring here specifically to Facebook. That's where we see it. It indicates how likely someone is to recall your ad or to remember your ad. Then there is sales. And of course, the objective here, it's the end goal for most businesses, sales and profit. The indicators here would be return on investment or return on ad spend. Your conversion rate, which is essentially the number of people who have made a purchase divided by the number of people who have visited your site. You obviously want to work on increasing that conversion rate. Your keywords, and this is referring to the different keywords that you might be bidding on. There would be various indicators around there, like maybe the cost per click is too high, the conversion rate is different on this keyword versus another, and you will find out more on keywords in lesson 6. Then bounce rate, that is something to do with analytics and the website. That is essentially the number of people or the percentage of people who have clicked to visit a page on your site but have then left straight away. So they haven't gone on to visit another page. Then we have retention, which is keeping your most loyal or valuable customers. Now, of course, this would generally or mostly be handled in-house or internally with a customer support or customer service team, but digital marketing or marketing can, of course, affect this, especially when you're looking at things like social media, community management, etc. But indicators for something like this, it is a bit broad. It's quite a broad goal at this point. Would be lifetime value, conversion rate, frequency, engagement, and then performance of your different segments. And that's, you would have split your most loyal customers into different segments, and some might be performing better than others, and that's what you would be building on and looking at. So after all that, what is performance marketing? An umbrella term that refers to advertising on different channels and paying only when an action is completed. For example, a click, a lead, or a sale. Now, if we break those down a bit, with clicks, you only pay for the clicks, not the impressions. Examples of where you might want to have this as a strategy for payment is traffic. So traffic objective, you only want to pay per click, so per visit to your site. Awareness, you don't necessarily want to pay for impressions because that will be incredibly expensive, nor do you want to pay for leads because that's not the objective of this objective. And then branding, of course, for the same reasons, awareness and branding are linked. Then we have leads, and this is where you set a target cost per lead and only pay for leads. I do need to stress that just because you set a target, it doesn't mean it will achieve it. Sometimes it'll be higher, sometimes it'll be lower, and you'll understand this better in the course. But examples where this would make sense would be for branding, for scale, so if you're wanting to increase your amount of users or buyers, and then of course for sales, turning those leads into paying customers. For sales, what you can do is you can set a target return on investment or return on ad spend. And of course, all of the objectives, it would make sense here that is the end goal, sales. At the end of the day, we are driving everything towards sales, revenue, and then profit. So the difference between revenue and profit is that revenue is still containing all the different expenses, the things that should actually be deducted. Once you've done that, then you get your profit. True performance marketing encompasses a variety of strategies and analyses. It's not about just setting an automated target and then leaving it running. There are some core traits of performance marketing, namely analysis, of course, of data and whatever means or information you have available. Then optimization, incredibly important because you're optimizing for better performance based on your analysis. Communication. Communication has to be effective across all channels, otherwise there is no point. I think I heard somewhere the other day that even great marketing won't save a bad product. That is essentially it. So you need to make sure that as a business, if you have control over that your communication is fantastic. Then efficiency, and that is referring to a few things. We're going to break each of these things down. Starting with analysis, you would use analytics tools, things like Google Analytics, reports that you can get from in-platform and third parties. Now, things that you would want to analyze would be your website, your marketing platforms, and your target audiences. So who you are targeting, where you're targeting them from, and what you're sending them to. That is what constantly needs to be analyzed. Then optimization. Techniques are definitely varied, but it is always, or should always, be based on data and insights. And insights only come about from looking at the data and analyzing it properly, as well as some logic and knowledge of trends and also different things. We will actually be looking at insights versus observations in the last lesson of Module 3. And then if we move on to communication, so effective across all mediums, It's incredibly important for retention, so keeping your customers happy. For social engagement, you need to have a proper social media strategy in place, community management policies, etc. Those have to be there. And then, of course, if you're using email, the communication around that needs to be streamlined, sending relevant communication, using the correct best practices and all those things. And as I think I said, we'll be spending time on that in Module 2. Finally, efficiency, which is all about logic and adaptation. It is finding solutions to problems, not just letting it run or letting it go, and also thinking outside of the box. It's not just about the marketing channel. That might not always be the problem. It could be the product, could be the site, etc. Then no wasted spend. It is incredibly important. I don't know how many times I have seen a keyword in a Google search campaign that has spent so much money and it is completely irrelevant to the business. It unfortunately just happens far more than it should. Then the main considerations in performance marketing, which are part of what ensures that we can keep to those 4 core concepts, is firstly tracking. We need to make sure that tracking is in place. We'll be looking at that in more detail in lesson 2, so the next lesson. Your budget. Of course, it's about making sure it's spent efficiently, so there's no wasted spend, it's not underspending. It's also not saying to clients, oh, I need huge sums of money, when actually you don't. It's based on thorough or proper research. Then channel selection. That's also about understanding the target market or the target audience, as well as the channels that are available to you, and knowing which demographics are on which channels, whether the reach maybe outweighs any other things like Facebook, for example. Generally, in the beginning, I wouldn't have recommended it for a business-to-business business. But now, because of the reach of it and the fact that we can target quite effectively, I would recommend it if there's a big enough budget. If not, then I would choose other channels. But yes, that's what it is about, cleverly choosing your channels to achieve the different goals that you have. Then there's also landing pages. Those need to be optimized, so user-friendly, fast, as much as possible. Very important. Once someone has clicked on an ad, essentially the responsibility of the platform is over. Then it is over to your website and to your customer service or any kind of internal processes that you have in place. Then competition. Something we always take into account. Some industries are far more competitive than others. Sometimes it makes sense to go after competitor keywords, so let's say competitor brand names is what I'm referring to, and other times it doesn't. So we always need to be on top of that, and of course make sure that whatever the product or service is that we're marketing is at the same level or better than the competition. Otherwise, it's going to be a very expensive exercise. And then volume. When it comes to optimizing a campaign, you need to make sure that you have enough volume to optimize with. If, for example, you only targeted 100 people, then there's no point in optimizing that, because it's not a big enough pool of people to optimize for. So at least 1,000, I would say, in terms of ads, at least 1,000 impressions. There are various different kind of thresholds that you would look at. So think fast. What does CPL stand for? Is it A, customer purchase list, or B, cost per lead? The correct answer is B, cost per lead. Well done, everybody. And that is it for lesson 1, but please do not go anywhere yet. I have a challenge for you today and I would love you to do it. But let's just look at what we're covering in lesson 2. What you're going to get out of this lesson is marketing funnels. You're going to understand those, determining your objectives, tracking your performance and how important that is, and then how analytics can help. If we recap this lesson, which was quite full of information. I hope you're all still with me and feeling okay and good and positive about the course. But first lesson, what we learned was key points in digital marketing history, so you can get a better understanding of where we are going with this course. Then digital marketing channels, the top ones I have to add, common terms and acronyms for the first module, and then objectives and KPIs, an introduction to that, plus performance marketing basics. Here is my challenge for you today. I would love you to imagine that for a 3-month campaign, you have a total budget of $15,000. Your client's objective for this campaign is to get as many leads as possible. It doesn't matter that what industry this business is in, the KPIs will be the same. So with that in mind, I want you to list what the top KPIs would be for this objective, what you think they would be. I'd like you to choose one channel per social media, PPC, and communication, so-called category in this lesson. It's a total of 3 channels. And then list why you think these channels would work. You don't have to know it for a fact. Please don't be afraid of any wrong answers. Even if you totally don't really get what I'm saying, try it anyway. Thank you so much. I will see you soon for lesson 2. It's going to be jam-packed. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. See you soon, guys. Bye.